Hello, Lana. Welcome to Bafunde Academy once again. I invite you as we continue learning about study skills. We have been looking at the various types of study skills, the skills that we need to acquire for us to have a proper way of study or a study that is effective at the end of the day, so that at the end of what you're reading, you would have learned something or you would have acquired something. So in this session, we want to look at appreciating poetry, and we want to see what appreciating poetry means, how we can appreciate poetry, and what are some of the things we need to put in place so that at the end of the day, we're able to understand and answer poetry questions. So I invite all of us, stay tuned, have your notebooks with you. I know poetry sometimes is a bit creepy, but only if you pay attention, you will understand. It is only when you pay attention that you will understand. Otherwise, I invite us all to be attentive until the end of the session. Welcome. Now, in order to appreciate a poem, you need to know how to study it. Generally, people fear poems because they believe that poems are hard, because most poets write with hidden languages, yeah? They write in a way you are not able to understand it from just that first look. You have to read it and read it again and read it even 5 to 10 times so that you're able to get what the poet is talking about, or what the poet is trying to express. So a poem is meant to be understood and is meant to be enjoyed. If you don't understand a poem, you will not even enjoy the poem. So the choice of words and the sounds are very important, as well as the arrangement and the meaning, because all these things help in bringing out the meaning of a poem. Remember, we talked about diction the other time, and we said that a poet or a writer of a poem is always very intentional when it comes to writing a poem, when it comes to selection of the words, when it comes to arrangement of these words. They don't just write it for the sake of it. So you have to take keen note and interest, to have interest in how the poet has arranged his or her words, what type of words he has chosen, and how he has organized his thoughts. So a poet may want to express a feeling or an idea about something, someone, or some place. So out of this, you'll come up with a poem, and you have to note the words that he has chosen, the arrangement of the words, the arrangement of the sounds, and so on and so forth. So unlike a novel or a short story, which are written in prose form, a poem is written in stanza form. You'll have stanza 1, stanza 2, and stanza 3. While poetry, while others like we have drama, which comes in dialogue form, and we have short stories, novels, and novellas, which come in prose form. That is, they're written in very many paragraphs. So each stanza usually deals with the main idea. Like stanza 1 is addressing something specific, stanza 2 is specific, stanza 3 is specific. But all those stanzas are interconnected to bring out one major theme amongst other themes. I hope that is clear, and I hope you've understood what that means. So there are various steps on how someone can analyze a poem. A poem may be difficult to analyze, but when you follow these steps, at the end of the day, you'll find that it's easier for you to get an understanding of what this poem is about. And number 1 is read the poem once in order to get the general impression of it and identify the persona. You're required to read it for the first time so that you get an overview of what it's talking about, to get what the person, to identify with the persona, whether it's a man, a woman, a child, a pastor, anybody suffering with something. So if the poem has a title, reflect on the significance of that title. Look at that title and relate it with what you've read for the first time so that you're able to try and get to understand what the poet was trying, or rather the message that the poet was trying to bring out. Number 2, read the poem for the second time and then the third time. And one secret about reading a poem is observing punctuation marks. Yeah, you observe the punctuation marks so that you're able to get the gist, and you're also able to understand what the poet is trying to say, or rather the experiences of the persona or the people who are taking part in the poem itself. So consider the theme of the poem, that is the general theme of what is being talked about in the poem. And it only comes once you've read it once, the second time and the third time. Actually, by the time you're reading it for the last time, you would have known how you ought to. You would have known the general theme, what the poem is generally talking about. Then again, examine the language that the poet has used. Yeah, the language that has been used. Consider the sound patterns, consider the images and all the figures of speech that have been used in that poem. You can as well note them down so that it may ease your way of analyzing the poem, or rather your way of looking at the poem. Then again, determine the meaning of the poem, the meaning that the poem conveys. Try and look at the message, the exact message of the persona, not really the persona but the poet, by looking at the experiences of the persona, the events that take place within the poem, and the very many other things which are within that poem. Then again, the last one is to evaluate your overall response to the poem. That is, what emotions have these things aroused in you. So by evaluating your response, you're able to tell whether you've understood the poem or whether you've not understood the poem. So trust me, by following the steps that I've given you and keenly reading a poem several times, by observing the punctuation marks, looking at the figures of speech, and going through the poem in a very serious way, you'll be able to understand a poem, and you'll be able to also answer poetry questions. It will be easier for you. So by understanding a poem, then it means you'll be able to appreciate the poem, you'll be able to analyze the poem, you'll be able to give details about the poem. So this is important for us to know, and I hope you've noted down the most important things. Should you be having any question concerning poetry in this line, you're allowed to head over to a discussion forum. Post your question and we're going to answer it together. Thank you for staying tuned, and see you in our next class.